chat window's open. I'm gonna screen share and we'll get right to it. How's that sound to everybody? So today, if everybody can hear me all right, I'd like to take a look at our, let's see here, there we go. Let's take a look at some newly populated assignments. So beginning 1 week from today, I'm going to make a couple of changes here. You can kind of take a look at all these right now. What I've decided to do, which would just kind of be easiest, is take all of these every week, you know, essentials and grammar worksheet number 1, all that kind of stuff. I'll take these all and create one additional module right up here at the top under the table of contents, which will just be resources. So you can either look up something if you were thinking about sentence organization or something like that. Paragraph organization in your essay or thesis statements. You can either look those up because you remember when we talked about them and maybe in what order, so you can find it that way, or you can find a general resource with copies of all of those links up here at the top right before the welcome page under resources. So you'll be able to kind of reference that stuff for the next couple of weeks. For the rest of the semester, you'll be able to reference it, but it'll be most important for the next 2 weeks because on September 29th, 2 weeks from today, we're gonna go ahead and take our grammar, our grammar test. So we'll have 2 weeks to there'll be one more worksheet, and then we'll kind of run through some scenarios. We'll do some exercises together as a group, and then we'll take it and then kind of hopefully be done with that section of it and move on to what we're going to start right now, which is, here we go, descriptive essay number 1. So there are 9 essay assignments, and they are populated here in according to their due date, all the due dates and all of the parameters for each assignment. Compare and contrast essay number 4. So some of these I've given you a little bit longer, and you kind of have to look ahead because there are there's only one, which is down here, number 8, which is actually 1,000 words. The other ones are all 500 words, which essentially amounts to Times New Roman, single space font 1 page, or double spaced Times New Roman 12-point font 2 pages. So it's a very modest amount. We're looking at basically a 5-paragraph essay in that 5 paragraphs, you know, pretty much in length would cover it. Maybe this argumentative one will be more, but you're not going to have to do much referencing outside as far as like APA format is concerned. So I left some links over there to refresh your memory from just from your English 100 classes, but there won't be much call for it. What I really want to concentrate on is your in-text use of quotation marks. And so that's the punctuation on quotation marks that we covered a couple of, last week, will be most effective for you, but you'll mostly be paraphrasing and putting out your own ideas. If you want to quote somebody else, I'm not going to require a separate works cited page, but I would like you to just be accurate and then put all of the context that I'll need, such as a New York Times reporter said, quote, and then use your quote. All of that kind of stuff can be in the signal phrases and in the context leading up to the quote and then your analysis afterwards. So no quote should be populated in any of your essays without some sort of context and without a proper analysis and explanation of what that means in your own words. Now, you won't have to do any of that for descriptive essay number 1. I'm going to take you through today's plan, which is going to give you a general introduction to every one of these assignments. So if you want to look further ahead, please do so, you know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks into the, you know, ahead for your assignments so that you can budget your time accordingly with the other things that you have going on with your classes. However, I don't want you to work too far ahead. It's really kind of important that you tackle some of this every week. So I don't want you to write a bunch of essays and then just not do anything for 6 weeks. And, you know, oh, I got it done, it's all fine. It doesn't really work that way when you're approaching writing as a process. What we're going to do is meet 3 times individually throughout the rest of the semester over a Zoom conference to discuss 3 essays at a time. And for our 9 essays that are coming up together, I'm going to be giving you feedback on that batch of 3 each time that we conference. And then you're going to take that, those notes and that conversation that we had and apply that to your revision efforts so that you can hand in your revised essays at the end of the semester in your portfolio for the most credit of anything that we're doing this semester. It's really a portfolio class. So I'm going to briefly go over each of these descriptions right now, the essay prompts, and tell you what you need to know for each essay. So if you'd like to keep something handy to just write something down, even because we're screen sharing here, that might take up all the real estate that you have on your computer here. Please be ready to kind of make some notes. If you think you might not remember one of these descriptions in weeks ahead, we can try to just kind of clear them up right now. And please feel free to interrupt me at any time to ask a specific question, anything I can clarify. Is that okay? Can I get, since we're screen sharing, can I just get a bunch of verbal responses that everybody's still with me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You.
Okay, so any questions about the game plan, or should we proceed? Excellent. Descriptive essay number 1. What the focus of this one is to really focus on word choice, language. Now, I come from a creative writing background. A lot of my training is in that workshop format where we discuss a lot of this. To convey emotion, you use your 5 senses. You use your sight, your sound, smells, taste, and touch. And then kind of a creative writer's approach to this is add movement to any of those, anything that works. Can the smell drift? Can the sight move? Can this thing spiral out of control? Can it do something along those lines? You can add some movement. And we kind of like these words together cover the generic creative writing term imagery. And you can also use that in like literary analysis. But imagery really has a specific meaning for our purposes. It means all of the senses, not just the visual sense. And in this descriptive essay, I want you to describe a moment. And this is kind of particularly important because most people are going to give way too much background and context, and you're not going to understand what happens. Just give me a moment. Use your, what I really want to do is for you to paint a picture with your words using all of your senses. And you can describe any significant moment you experienced while really here on cruise or traveling somewhere outside the United States. And traveling somewhere outside of your own home is really what I'm going for here. Not a place you regularly visited, but if you want to basically kind of get down to it, you can just choose cruise, and that would be a great moment to choose. There must have been some moment when you were on cruise when you were just looking out at the sea and you weren't working, or maybe you were in the middle of working, it doesn't matter. But you just kind of like noticed that you were there. And all of your senses were speaking to you about the temperature, how it felt, the smell of the ocean, all this kind of stuff. So that's what I want you to explore here. And what we're going to do is try to create some interesting sentences from that. And then we'll have enough to talk about in our conference. So here is what I would like. Please read the further description here on vivid language, taking the time to choose your language well. And over the next week, also on Thursday, we're going to talk a little bit about concision, choosing the right words and just the right number of words, not any additional words that don't need to be there. I don't want you to think that since you're exploring here, that we just get to use as many words as possible. That's not what we're going for. What we're using is the best choice of words. That's what we're going for here. Now, to leave the reader with a clear impression, you have to think of some way to organize this experience. You can do it sequentially, where you're talking about what happens over the course of 1 minute, just a moment in the day. But somehow organize your thoughts so that it's not just a journal entry of anything that comes to mind at that time. Try to organize them. It's not going to be the same as organizing an argumentative essay. You're not going to have point 1, point 2, point 3 with evidence, evidence, evidence. But you should be able to at least have an overview yourself and explain in one sentence what happens from beginning to end. And questions? The following week, week 6, we will take our grammar test here on the 29th. Why don't we do this? Why don't we make it the 29th, the essay will be due, and then I'll post this up so that October 1st will be our grammar assignment. So you can finish 2 essays and still have a little time in between Tuesday and Thursday if you have any last minute questions about any material that we can go over before the grammar test. I'll put all this, of course, in, but pretty much all the information you need to know is here. So with this evaluation essay, we're going to switch roles, and what we're going to try and do is just do a lot of different kinds of writing throughout the semester. So this one, I want to expose you to basically a kind of a different structure, a structure that you may not be used to, but a structure that you can always use. There's 2 ways to organize an evaluation of something. The key in an evaluation essay is that you make a judgment. That's what it means. You're not just going to discuss the similarities and differences. That's a different kind of essay that we'll get to in a little bit. In this one, I want you to establish criteria and make a judgment. Criteria means the standards. So you're going to say, like, I used the example this morning of a terrible movie I just saw. What did I sit through? It was an hour and a half of my life I'll never get back. It was the new Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It was Bill and Ted Face the Music. When I was a kid and like in middle school, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure came out and we all thought it was hilarious. It was totally corny and whatever, but it kind of worked. But like it doesn't, like in my opinion, it doesn't work anymore. And somebody brought up the point that I thought was a good one. You know, I can't see Keanu Reeves not killing people after John Wick. I mean, if he's going to be like a nice guy or a funny guy, no, I see him as a killer. So that kind of gets at the heart of exactly what I wanted to establish with criteria. Now, the movie sucked, but not because John Wick wasn't killing people. The movie sucked because it just wasn't a successful comedy. It wasn't funny. It was hackneyed. It was a bad example. So it didn't have enough action for me. Well, it wasn't that kind of a movie. So that is an unfair, it's an unfair judgment against the movie. You have to establish what a good movie in this genre should do. That's your criteria. So a goofy comedy should be funny. It wasn't. So it didn't meet the criteria. So that's how you're going to do it right there. Not just because, well, a goofy comedy should have great action. Well, maybe, but not necessarily. There's plenty of good comedies that don't have a ton of action or any action whatsoever. So that's what I mean by criteria and judgment. It may seem self-explanatory, but I don't want you to get off track. These 2 things keep it focused so that you can express a judgment with a good foundation rather than what is happening I think more and more often that you see in major media is some sloppy criteria being used to judge things. You know, I didn't like this guy because I didn't like his hair. Well, you need to evaluate his performance, not his hairdo. Wrong criteria. So is that you know, is that a fair judgment? So I want you to articulate your criteria and then judge accordingly. And there are 2 ways that we can do this. You haven't seen this a whole lot probably in college in your writing yet, but remember when I told you your thesis is your entire essay in 1 sentence? Well, you always, as a college essay, this is a nice standard rule of thumb, end of your introduction, state your thesis. It's going to be, in this case, your thesis is going to be your judgment. It's good or bad, right? But with an evaluation, sometimes it's more useful if you're going to, sometimes it's more useful if you save that judgment for the end. So you're going to see this part, the inverted version of this, where you do all this stuff and then you conclude with your thesis, as in you reveal your judgment. You don't let them know what it is at the beginning. Don't let the reader know what it is at the beginning. It can be a little bit more effective when you're trying to very, very casually persuade somebody, because it simulates the experience of starting with an open mind, establishing good criteria, and then giving it a fair shake before you reach a conclusion. And that's what you want to do there. So you'll see this a lot in very good journal writing, magazine writing. In the New Yorker and in the Atlantic Monthly, they're not going to necessarily come out right at the beginning and tell you what they think. You might lose your reader that way for that style. So these are just different ways of doing it. And sometimes if you're doing the traditional argumentative essay, you're going to need to establish that criteria and thesis right at the beginning. You're going to need to give them the judgment because you want that information to be very, very clear because that's the proper format. But here you can choose. Most of the time you're going to get to choose what format works best for you. So please read over all this good stuff and let's not let it ramble or fall into the trap of sounding like an internet troll. That's what we want to avoid here. So this isn't just take your favorite Rotten Tomatoes insult and sling it out here in an essay. I want you to, you know, come up with a thoughtful argument. Any questions? All right. Moving right along, compare and contrast. With this one, I do believe we're gonna have to take a look at this. So I put a few short videos. These are very short videos, just little YouTube videos on the conceptual requirements for a compare and contrast essay. So notice the judgment here is not one is better than the other. This is a different style of comparing, it's a different style of essay. And you must both compare and contrast, not one. Please do both. Also another short one, these are all 500 words. So it's 2 pages double spaced. And I will try to take care of any mistakes that I see as I type these out. But this will give you a, if the links aren't working, I don't know what to tell you. Oh, I mean, I'm probably in edit mode. So there we go. Well, it doesn't matter. I wasn't going to see the whole thing anyway. You guys can watch that when sound is working appropriately. So compare and contrast. What you're going to do to choose your topic is you can choose your own. And, you know, these are just kind of silly, some silly examples, but plenty to prove the point as long as you do it well. This one right here will give you access to a podcast, which is basically just a podcast of some NPR shows. And what they're going to do is have a debate topic. And if you basically make it, use your imagination to rephrase the debate topic, you're going to have 2 sides of an issue. Then you can compare and contrast 2 sides of something. So they're doing it as a debate style, which is a little bit differently than how you're going to present it. But you can say that there's some similarities between the people that want this, and there's some differences between this, and here's what they are. And these are, of course, you know, modern topics, and these are just kind of some very general general topics if you can't think of anything else. But feel free to use your creativity, and as long as you can justify it with some in-depth analysis and have something interesting to say about the similarities and differences, maybe dog and cat people will be interesting enough if you do it well. But this is the thing, is when you choose dog and cat people or vegetarian and vegans, you're running the risk of being really boring or having extremely uninsightful things to say that are totally obvious to everybody. So if you are going to choose one of these kinds of things, please make the analysis very interesting. It's a little easier to have interesting things to say about complex issues, but that's the thing, is you kind of have free reign, and I want to give you the free reign to make these kinds of judgments for yourself. And there's 2 ways that you can organize this paper, and this one has to do with how do you balance the organization of comparing and contrasting.
I
So
got a question about all of
go
this
ahead.
stuff. Can we come to you and talk to you before we come write our essays?
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
okay,
I'm going to
awesome.
stick around. If you have something specific to talk about, I'm going to stick around after class each time, but I have open office hours between these two classes. I have a morning class. You can talk to me anytime. Just, I mean, if you
Okay.
want to set up an
Awesome.
appointment, just email me and then we can do
Okay.
that. And,
That works.
but if you have a specific question that you think other people might benefit from as well, like I don't understand what this means, then maybe everybody could benefit. Do you have anything specific that you want to talk about right now?
No, I just mean like when trying to set up an essay, like, you know, what the difference between dogs and cats are and how are they similar.
Yep.
I can come up with some BS, but I would like to know how to write it correctly so that I'm actually doing the right thing and I don't come to you and we talk about my 3 essays and you say, hey, you know, you should have done this way. And I went, well, you know, I wish I had just known that in the beginning.
Right. So here is, I got the links, I set them up wrong, so it takes us out of Brightspace to bring you here, but this is the link that's in the description. How do you do the compare and contrast essay? That's what we're talking about right here. So let's say that there are, you're comparing and contrasting, like here, 2 pizza restaurants. So this is just, you know, dumb examples so that they can get the point across. But this is the old classic Venn diagram, right? You're going to have some differences, and then you're going to have some areas of overlap. And this is one way to organize how you're going to come about this. So I would suggest that if you've never written one of these before, that you take, don't choose dogs and cats, look at the Intelligence Squared link and look at some interesting topics so that you can have some interesting stuff to say. And that will be, it's a lot easier to write a paper when you have something to say. The hardest kind of paper is, oh, write whatever you feel, or I'm starting with a blank page, let's see what happens. I'm like, every time I have one of those exercises, I'm like, you're killing me. I always hated those exercises. If somebody asked me a direct question, I could give them a direct answer. But when people ask vague questions or something along those lines, do whatever you feel like, it always makes the assignment harder for me personally. So don't choose dogs and cats if that's not for you. Choose one of these things that'll fit into this, as in, like, we should concentrate on genetic engineering so that we can bring the dinosaurs back. There's 2 camps. Here are the things that they do. They both consider themselves moral, but here's how they different in the way that they talk about the morality. Now we're really getting into some stuff, right, that we can talk about. We're talking about what people think about life, what people think about religion, people think about playing God. Those are very, very different things. So do either of those groups, if I had don't bring the extinct dinosaurs back through Jurassic Park technology, or do you think either of these people would think that, oh yeah, well, I'm the person that doesn't want to bring them back, and that's because these people are immoral, and then these people would agree with them? I'm immoral? No. They're going to both think that they're moral right here. That's going to come into the beginning. They both think they're right for moral reasons. Excuse me. So, like, to continue along with that, there's basically 2 ways that you can kind of do it. You can take the most relevant things that you're going to say and then organize them either in, I'm going to deal with all the similarities first in a paragraph or 2 or 3, and then deal with all the differences in a paragraph or 2 or 3. Or you can deal with one particular similarity or difference and describe both sides of it, and then move on to another topic and then describe how they're similar or different, and then move on to another one where you describe how they're similar or different. So you can organize them either as little topics that you're going to explore individually, or you can explore all the ones that fit into a category first, and then all the ones that fit into the other category that later. Does that make sense?
Was that to me?
That's to everybody. Yeah, that's how you do the compare and contrast essay. That's to everybody. Yeah.
So if you have
yeah, go ahead.
2 points where they're like, they do compare, but they also contrast on that issue, but we're trying to write it as, here are all my similarities, here are all my differences. how would you do it that you can kind of talk about one simile that is different while also doing, like, I guess I have a hard time with writing something. I don't know how to ask the question, but I
You know what?
think you get what I'm saying.
No, I think you asked a great question. I think that's a very good question, because what you're talking about is really illustrates the point that I want to make here is don't choose the form before you figure out the content of your paper. Do your Venn diagram, do your brainstorming, make your lists, and then say, what's the best form with this information that I have? So if you come at it from that approach, what you're going to find is if you have things that are very closely related, it's not cat people and dog people. We're into this thing now where where you want to talk about, let's say, morality and bringing the dinosaurs back. And there's a lot of overlap about doing the right thing and progress and things along those lines, but they do it in different ways. Well, then the proper way to do that is to discuss the individual issue and let that be the structure, rather than I have category A and category B. It's much easier to talk about things in complexity as long as you say, all right, let's talk about just the idea of progress. How are they similar? How are they different? They're similar like this, and they're different like this. Now let's talk about the issue of morality, separate from progress. They're similar like this, they're different like that. So the form is going to really determine, the content is really going to determine the form of your paper. And that's why it's always best to have at least a rough outline or a little sketch or a little kind of some bullet points on a Post-it note, anything, before you start deciding the big things of, like, how am I going to write this essay? What's my thesis statement? Does that give you something to work with?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So when you take a look at this one, you're going to get a lot of, like, when you kind of dive into this one as you're doing this, here's the section. I just wasn't scrolling down long enough. Here's where they go into a little bit more by subject, point by point, category by category. There's basically any way that you can think of organizing your ideas are going to be the categories that you could potentially use as paragraph structures. So sometimes you're going to cover comparison and contrast for each topic in each paragraph. And that's going to be probably the more complex, more nuanced way to do this, rather than just get all the stuff out that's on this side of the list and then get all the stuff out that's on that side of the list. So you can do it either way, but typically with complex issues, you're going to find, I think, that having that balanced approach of going, figuring out how you can talk about a particular subject, the similarities and the differences, and then transitioning into a different subject, and the similarities and differences is going to be probably your more useful and nuanced argument. That's my opinion as a teacher, having read a bunch of these papers. But you are certainly free to create your own structure if you feel that you can do it well. It's really your judgment. That's the compare and contrast. So they have a little reading material there. So as right now, also, we're just kind of doing a general overview. So as we get closer to each one, we can discuss a little bit more in depth. But you know, the first one or two, I think we're pretty all right. I think the first three, we should really understand everything about them pretty thoroughly, and we can kind of leave these other ones, essays 4 through 9. Let's do a brief overview right now. And I will definitely, of course, answer any specific questions, but don't worry if there's still a long way off, if there's still some things that you want to explore. Like this one in particular, cause and effect can be a little confusing. I mean, what do you mean? Because when I say, if you can't think of a cause and effect topic, let's say, how did you end up here at Cal Maritime? And somebody, you know, sometimes you get these responses like, well, I don't know what to write about, because the answer I can tell you in like 3 words. I want to work this job. So that's why I went here. Not that complicated. How do I write a 2-page paper about that? Okay. Well, let's talk about some of the other factors then. So this is what I mean here, because you could answer a lot of questions like, how did you end up here? And that you don't have to write about this topic, but if you're having trouble coming up with one, that's your default topic. How did you end up at Cal Maritime? But let's talk about a couple of things. If we looked I also teach the verbal logic class, the argumentation and class, and we break down causality into a number of categories. There's different kinds of causes, and some of this will sound either brand new or very familiar, or it'll make total sense as soon as you hear it. Like the most weird one is the remote cause. And you may have seen this from the first Jurassic Park movie, if you remember the old one, the first one that came out. A butterfly flaps its wings in Africa, and there's a monsoon in the Himalayas, right? That's a remote cause. That's a butterfly effect. You have this one little thing, but it affected a chain reaction. And so that was, without that one little thing, the monsoon wouldn't have happened, right? So this is the remote cause. But you can't really say that's the only thing that caused it, right? There's probably a few other things that contributed to that. So there's some other contributing factors. Or you can say the car blew up because the bomb exploded. Now, there's a lot of things that may have happened. There was some flammable materials in there, but they probably wouldn't have caught on fire unless the bomb exploded. So you can say that one is a direct cause. One is a necessary cause. If the bomb didn't explode, the car wouldn't have exploded. So these kinds of things. There's no way of getting around this one. If you're out of gas, the car won't start. That's it. You can have all the fumes you want. You can have spare change to buy stuff, but you can't, it's just not going to work. But there are some things that just kind of go together. Like I chose to major in accounting because I liked my business class in high school. The salaries are good in that field. And I had a personal connection. I have an aunt who's an accountant. So all these things together contributed to my decision. And let's take a look at this. Contributing factor, direct cause, contributing factor, remote cause. Those are the only ones that we're kind of dealing with, those three. There's other different kinds of causality that we can break it down into. But those three, I think, should be sufficient to add up to, okay, can you tell the story of how you ended up at Cal Maritime with a little more, a little more detail other than the 3-word explanation. I want to work that job or this or that or the other thing. So take a look. We'll use the Bob Marley example. I like to use the Bob Marley example. I shot the sheriff, so I'm on the run from the law, right? Y'all know the song, right? So did you shoot, in the song he says, Sheriff John Brown was always putting me down. So are we to take it that Bob Marley shot the sheriff because the sheriff was putting him down? That's not the right causality, right? It's a contributing factor to something else, right? It's a contributing factor in the same way that automobiles are a contributing factor to climate change. Yes, that contributes to it, but there's other reasons such as industrial manufacturing. So you don't want to oversimplify the case. So back to I shot the sheriff. Direct cause from running on the law. The fact that the sheriff was always trying to bring me down is simply contributed toward the situation where Bob Marley felt he had to shoot the sheriff in self-defense. So, questions about remote cause, contributing factor, or direct cause. Use all three. Or pick your favorite two. If you have a direct cause, I'm going to Cal Maritime because X and I got nothing else to talk about, well, then you need to explore the remote causes. You need to talk about the conversation that you had when you were working as a caddy with the rich guy on the field. It's your first job in high school. That's how you kind of explore this part, right? Does that make sense for everybody?
Yes.
Sounds good. And remember, when Sheriff John Brown says to you, kill it before it grows, just get the hell out of there. If a sheriff ever says that to you, just run. You don't want any part of that sheriff. It's a bad sheriff. No sheriff in his right mind would say that to somebody. Exploratory essay number 5. We have 2. CalProp. All of the links are here that apply right now, but I will be posting more links closer to the election because there aren't that many really good interviews right now on, KPFA or any of these other places, any other local radio stations, there aren't that many really good interviews with people advocating for and against and debating these issues. But there are 12 statewide propositions on this year's ballot, and we can just avoid all presidential politics and just talk about state ballots. And they're a little bit more complicated to talk about because a lot of people are trying to pull a fast one with these statewide ballots. Things are going to be worded in kind of a weird way, and they're worded that so that if you only take a brief look at them, that you're going to assume something that they're when the intention of the bill is something else. So they take a little work to get, and a lot of people just don't put in that work, and so they just kind of have a vote, like a gut reaction of, I don't vote for new taxes, or I always vote for school stuff, or I always vote for the watershed bill, I never vote for the watershed bill. It's kind of like that. So I think as a useful exercise for moving forward as a responsible citizen, you're going to vote many, many, many times about local ballot issues, and hopefully that if you explore one or two once in a while, in your young voting careers, that you're going to make excellent and responsible voters for the rest of your life. So we'll take a look at these guys, a couple of different ones, and you can choose any of the proposals. There's 12 props. And like I said, there'll be more information closer to the deadline for this essay as we get there. What I want you to do is do an exploratory essay. You don't have to necessarily come to a conclusion, but you're going to take the proposition this week and in one 500-word essay, explore the proposition. So you don't have to judge it. You don't have to wrap it up neatly with a bow. Exploratory essay is exactly that. I'll give you a little bit more information, but I want to hear what you think. And I want you to communicate and put things in context. So this right here is very dry. This is the official government proposition, and that's going to be in all legalese, and it's going to be very hard to even tell what the hell they're talking about. And this is a very good editorial, just kind of middle of the road. This is what it's all about in very simple terms. And it's going to just tell you, this is a massive tax bill for education, or this is a giant effort to put affordable housing back into California, or something along those lines. It's very kind of even almost oversimplified, but you'll get that perspective there of, wait, what are these people actually trying to go for? Because I don't understand this whole thing about dialysis. I don't know what's going on there with the whole kidney dialysis thing, but it's back on the ballot now. There's something weird about kidney dialysis in our upcoming election ballot. So we'll explore it. We'll figure out what's going on there. But it's basically patient advocacy against the people who own the companies. There's some competing interests there, and there's a little bit of a battle. So week 9, October 20th, I want you to explore one of these issues, the proposition. The following week, I want you to do the same issue and explore the negative argument. What's the argument against this proposition? Analyze. And at this point, now what you can do is, having done the pro argument before, spend most of your time doing the negative argument, but you can go ahead and give us a conclusion here. And I think I might have to, maybe I didn't, I'll probably put in another little bit of description around here, but here in your second one, you can give us an analysis toward the end of which one you think has the stronger argument. Because some of the arguments you're going to disagree with, but I need you to explore them anyway. That's kind of the whole point. Questions?
What's your opinion on the potential long-form debate on the Joe Rogan podcast between Joe Biden and Trump?
Oh, my Lord. What it would be is, I think a lot of people signing up for Spotify. I think that's what the potential would be. I think Spotify stock would go through the roof, and you should definitely invest. Go. The actual chance, I wonder how big of a name he's going to get, actually. So he's got well over a billion views on his podcast. And sometimes, very seldom, you actually get a solid politician on there. So I don't know. I wonder, there's got to be some plans for one of the bigger politicians. I don't know if it's going to be one of the vice presidential candidates or something like that, but I bet somebody is going to go on the Joe Rogan podcast, but definitely not the two of them face to face. That ain't going to happen. Boy, that would be fun though. With him moderating, that'd be hilarious. Maybe I could just settle this election with a steel cage match. That would be amazing. Process essay. Any other questions before we move on to essay number 7? Good stuff. Essay number 7, process essay. This is a description, a step-by-step analysis and explanation of a process. There is a very, very slight distinction between a how-to manual, like a recipe, and a process essay. So this is the difference between how to change the oil in your car, do step X, Y, and Z. That's how to. This one is, tell me how a car engine functions. Okay, you got this and you got that and the other thing. You're not telling me to do something. That's just, it's a simpler way of writing. So what I want you to do is describe a process, like the workings of a mechanical engine. So you can take, how about let's take that giant diesel engine on the Golden Bear. How does it work? Explain to me why there are no spark plugs in a diesel engine. Explain to me the size of the crankcase and how all this kind of stuff works. I don't know. I always thought it was kind of interesting from the documentary form that the Wright brothers, I watched this documentary just a little while ago. The Wright brothers made their first airplane. The wings flapped up and down. Isn't that ridiculous? I thought they had solved that and they had a fixed wing with a rudder, at least to control at least some basic movements by the time they flew at all. But no, they flew up there and their control going one way or the other, like by trying to mimic the action of a bird's wings. So the whole, the way that the mechanism that we use now was developed a little bit later by somebody that they sued for copyright infringement, a guy named Curtis, who, this is ridiculous. So amazing. So the how a rudder works on an airplane, the system that we still use today was invented shortly after the Wright brothers took flight, and the guy almost got run out of business. So that's how I'd like to hear how rudders work on an airplane. It's still a process that we use right now. So that would be an interesting thing to write about. So take a pick, but I want you to kind of look at this. You have to be wary of the tendency to just use repetitive language or bullet points or lists here. So even if there may be, this would be so easy if I could just write a diagram and just point to point A and B and C, or this would be so easy if I could just give you 6 bullet points and we'd be done with it. The challenge here is to construct sentences to give people the visuals and the information without resorting to a system of lists, bullet points, and diagrams. Understand? This is way ahead, sitting until November. After the election, we can all talk about the election and then talk about how a rudder works, or am I even using the right word? A rudder, that's not the right word, is it? Somebody correct me. What is the thing on an airplane's wing that makes it either go up or down? Somebody knows this.
That's the elevators.
Elevators. That's the part. So you turn it and here we go. Rudder. I'm ashamed of myself. I'm sorry. Oh, I feel so much better now. Well, next semester, I'm not going to make a jerk out of myself. How about that? Okay. Appreciate that. Number 7, moving on to number 8. Okay, we're almost there. Everybody still with me? Let's get a little verbal check-in.
Yep.
Yeah.
You guys are champs. Thank you so much for your patience. I know this is a lot of just stuff I'm throwing out at you without any real chance for you to participate or think. But argumentative essay. Here, let's go. So this is your larger one, 1,000 words, about 4 pages, double spaced. this will give you the opportunity to kind of revisit the kind of thing that you were asked to do your freshman year when you wrote the research paper. It's a shorter version, but I'd like you to format with APA. I got all the links down here. All the good stuff is in there. Citation review here. If we need to a little bit closer to the date, we can review some of those citation issues. We'll do that, but this isn't until our last, last section of the semester in November. But we've got a lot of good things that you can use to come up with your own story in the New York Times editorial and the Ethicist and some other editorials. That with this one, we're going to go back to our traditionally structured essay with an introduction, thesis at the end, main body paragraphs, short rebuttal, and coherent conclusion. This is the stuff that we talked about essentially in a couple weeks ago when I gave you the organization information, how to organize your thoughts. So since you've all been using APA format, probably for all your other classes, we're going to stick with that. And we're going to have, that's basically it. Find a contemporary topic over which reasonable people disagree. Now, although that was self-explanatory when I started teaching, a contemporary topic over which reasonable people disagree is becoming a debatable statement of itself. I mean, you guys are out there and you're the next generation. You probably don't think reasonable people disagree over whether climate change is real or not, whether it's happening at all. Probably the verdict's in there. So we're going to have to, let's say we want to talk about climate change. Can anybody come up with a thesis right now that that goes a little further or makes some kind of nuanced argument different than it's either happening or it isn't? Here's my argument for it is happening, because that's not a very timely paper anymore. That was, I mean, we could have wrote that paper back in the 1980s and it would have been, oh, okay, there's evidence. We got to look at some evidence, right? I'm going to stop the screen share. Let's get everybody to check in here. Here is, okay, whether birds are real or not, whether or not birds are real. I like it. How about some other, we can just type things up in the chat room. So what variation on climate change can we specify? How can we get into that so that we have more than a third grade paper?
You could do whether like individual decisions, like driving a greenfield car or reducing your electronic usage, is beneficial, like in comparison to like China producing like 60% of the world's CO2.
Great.
Or
So
the giant fires that affect everybody's actions.
right. So you know what we have to do with forest management? Burn more. We got to burn more, right? So as we're trying to reduce our greenhouse gas footprint by driving Priuses, we're going to burn more to prevent catastrophic forest fires. So yeah, let's bring back nuclear. Complicated, right? So we're getting into it. Keep going. How about, can we stick with, how about the new green economy? Economic consequences, Justin says, of climate change on either our country or other countries. So for example, I think the Maldives, is it pronounced the Maldives? They're gonna cease to exist in a number of years. They're going to be it's a nation that's gonna be completely underwater in the South Pacific. It's gonna be submerged. They're basically gonna be, everybody who was a Maldivian citizen is going to have to become a refugee and go somewhere else. Bangladesh, we're gonna see catastrophic climate refugee like human crises in the upcoming decades in the low-lying areas of Bangladesh. There's gonna be millions and millions of people that are displaced, and it's gonna be everybody's business. So what are these things? That's how you do it. You get a little bit deeper into it. Not the issue that people are disagreeing about right now is or all of these things, probably for a university level paper, we don't want to talk about whether climate change is real or not. We may want to talk about how climate change is, why it is still debated, even though scientists don't debate it. So what are the political ramifications? You can get into some very, very interesting territory as to what are the strategies. I mean, it's pretty obvious that people that have money to be made by classic fossil fuel cultivation are in charge of marketing for that purpose, but it gets complicated real fast. So don't oversimplify your topic. Carbon tax is an absolutely viable option for discussion. Whether it's viable, carbon tax, we need it because, we don't need it because it doesn't go far enough. Bringing back nuclear, all great stuff. So you get what I'm saying. You don't want to choose a topic that might be out there in the evening news on NBC that is still, let's just say, it's oversimplified in mainstream media. One side says this, the other side says that. What do? Somebody's right, and history will show it. So yeah, it's great to talk to you guys about it, because we just don't have this. I apologize profusely if one of you is a climate science denier. I don't mean to insult your personal philosophy on life, but it's getting harder and harder to say that as a 21-year-old in open society and not be laughed out of the room. So it's coming to the point where that's an old fart thing to say. An old fart who actually works for a company that might be mining fossil fuels. So avoid that, get into the intellectual discussion. Construct your essay, not on this side's dumb, but this is the evidence to that reasonable people disagree about. But I think there's a stronger side. Here it is. Make sense?
Are there certain topics that you want us to just flat out avoid? I mean,
I am so glad you mentioned that. Absolutely, because it's not that they're off limits. It's just that I don't want to read them. So I'm going to include a list in there, and there's only two. There's three, actually.
what are they?
Yeah, I'll put them in there, but here they are for you. What is the first one? Anything relating to changing borders and well, I guess it's four. I've had to expand the list over the years, and then I brought it back, and I was like, okay, we'll do everything again. But here are my top three. No gun control stuff, no abortion stuff, and no South China Seas stuff. You know how many times I've read those papers? It's just, I just can't do it anymore. So that's it.
Can we do the pedophile underworld in American politics?
So, well, here's the thing. What reasonable people disagree? How would you state your thesis so you could actually bring reasonable people who disagree into a subjective or into a productive debate about that?
Well, I mean, the majority of Americans don't believe that it's a significant issue, but then you got some people that believe like the entire government's completely controlled. And you look at like Bill Clinton's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
Some people say it's just conspiracy, and others say that's like completely based.
Well, how are you gonna? So you have to make the argument to me right now, because right now what I'm sounding is, can I talk about this crazy conspiracy theory? You can talk about it, but what reasonable people think that there is a crazy conspiracy of our world leaders all getting together to have sex with children? Now you found one guy, Jeffrey.
I mean, I think it's a growing idea. It's a growing idea. Like if you look at the flight logs on Jeffrey's plane, there's a large portion of like CIA members and the presidents that flew on it. And like, why do all these people have such close ties with a proven pedophile? Like, I think maybe 2 years ago, it was like a small conspiracy theory that very few people believed in.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think it's a growing idea.
So here's the thing about conspiracy theories. Typically, I'm just gonna lay it on the line for you right now. If you want to investigate a conspiracy theory, I would ask the question, why is this conspiracy theory gaining traction among people who vote, right? Because I know it's fun. It's funny and it's fun. And I would love, in a different class, we kind of explore this a little bit more for the different formats. But I mean, like, there is nothing more fun than talking to somebody who believes the moon landing was fake. I think that is absolutely hilarious. That is basically better than sports for me. It's better than watching football. It's just watching this person react when you just say a bunch of stuff. But that's the thing is, in my infinite experience in the world, I heard somebody who was very wise once say, conspiracy theories are there to discourage actual analysis. If you can point to one of these things, what it does is it sidetracks everybody and puts an answer on something that should be investigated. So when you say, okay, there are people that are doing this, right? So what's the difference between Jeffrey Epstein is a pedophile and he was rich? All these things are facts, right? Now, there is a giant group of people that are making it happen. And all of the world's connected leaders, because he knew them, are all involved in the sex trafficking of minors. And this has to do something with the world order. This has to do with something with the way that nations interact. This has something to do with the way that your taxes are decided upon in Congress. Are you making that connect? Because that's what you're making right now. Now, that some rich people are pedophiles is not open to debate. Some are, and hopefully they'll all end up dead. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, you get what I'm saying here, right? You are this close to completely going off the rails and having a non-functioning discussion. So was Hillary Clinton running a sex trafficking scheme out of the basement of a pizza parlor? Right, you've heard that one.
Yeah, that's back when it was
Pizzagate.
There's less
sorry.
evidence.
Sorry, I got all my conspiracies mixed up. It had something to do with the basement of a pizza parlor in somewhere. I don't know.
In Washington, D.C., I remember that one. Then the guy shot it
See,
out.
I thought it was in Kansas. I was going to go with Kansas. It was Washington, D.C.? Okay.
No, it was D.C. because that's where all the political figures were meet
Okay,
there.
so the question is not, is this true or not? To even ask the question, that really needs to be investigated. Is that true? That already you've lost all reasonable people. Already, right there. The question that you want to ask is, why are these ridiculous conspiracy theories seeming to gain more popularity, right? What is it about our current society that necessitates these kinds of ridiculous ways of thinking about the world? So, I mean, I think you can really start from the premise, conspiracy theories are designed as a propaganda measure to discourage actual analysis of the things that affect your life. They're designed to sidetrack you. If you're not smart enough to pick up on that, you might just look in this wrong direction and then good, we've taken care of you. You're looking in that direction while we control this, we do this. So when you say, how do the automotive companies, a conspiracy of automotive companies control General Motors? It's a great example that I like. It's one that's not my example. It's been used many times before. How do the people in power control General Motors? It's not a question, right? How do the powerful conspiracy people, the people that control all the resources in the universe, control General Motors? Why can't General Motors act independently of the powerful people? It's because they're the same people, and it's not a conspiracy. It's an analysis by saying, well, they own it. It's just a fact. The people that own General Motors control General Motors rather than anybody else, because that's the way it works. So it's conspiracy theories have this, well, the powerful are doing this and that and the other thing. They have this kind of circular nonsense to them. And it's basically, you're always this close unless you are going to do a spectacular job on a conspiracy theory, as in, why is it gaining traction? You're going to have to come up with something good, because if you just want to talk about conspiracy theories and whether they're crazy or valid, It's not college level. It's just not for an argumentative paper. I mean, I love to take this one and make it its own assignment, but we just don't have time this semester to do that. Now, I don't know, kind of got off with a little bit of a tangent there, but do you kind of understand where I'm coming from on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's
Yeah.
because what separates like talking about aliens controlling people or like reptilians and
Yeah.
pedophilia, like that would just be nonsense. So, but what if it's like on the level like Edward Snowden and the government tracking you?
Okay, so what's the conspiracy?
So originally that was a conspiracy until he
No.
leaked the
No,
evidence.
it wasn't. That's the thing. This is a very, very separate issue from a conspiracy. A conspiracy is secret. When you have thousands of people employed in a giant warehouse doing jobs that are under constitutional protection of privacy, you're not allowed to know what they are because of the Homeland Security. It's not a conspiracy. It's a government program. Like Social Security is a government program. And so is Medicare. Those are government programs. They're not conspiracies. It's an institution that functions in a specific way. This institution happened to have a very, very broad definition of what they were allowed to do. And they took it and ran. So now that everybody knows about it, guess what? They're still doing it. So there's no conspiracy here. There's no secret plot to take over something that was formerly untaken over. What they were doing is, as new technology arrived, like data, like meta-analysis, metadata, collecting of metadata, well, that's not in the First Amendment because it wasn't invented yet. So they didn't have to have any language in the First Amendment about metadata. So as new technologies emerge, people are going to grab it. That's not a conspiracy. That's just the thing that happens. So that's what I'm saying is that, like, if somebody's behind something, like the NSA is behind the spying, that's not a conspiracy. That's an NSA program. It's a government-funded program that we all know about. And for a while they were trying to keep it quiet, but that doesn't make it like a conspiracy. It's like there's an institution, a structure that is completely cut off from our knowledge. And I mean, we could vote them out if we wanted to. You can't vote a conspiracy out, but we could just all vote them away. So that's why what you're talking about is not a conspiracy. It's government surveillance on its own citizens. And the
But it's
government
just
has
been
always
deemed
watched its own
unlawful.
citizens. Well, so in your opinion, you're going to argue not that it's a conspiracy. You're going to argue that that the actions of this giant government program that we all pay for with our tax dollars is actually unconstitutional.
Well, that's what they're looking at in court right now. And
Good.
since it was secret,
So I don't want to see the word conspiracy anywhere around there, because that's all it does. It's going to distract us from the issue, which is, are the actions of our federal government that are paid for with our taxes in alignment with the Constitution for issues that weren't invented yet when the Constitution was written? We got to figure that stuff out. So stay away from the conspiracy. That's what I'm saying, is that there's no conspiracy to talk about here. It's just tax dollars and government programs like Medicare, or like funding a road project. Oh my God, you know who paid for that road? We did. Did you guys know that? It's like, don't get
but what about
distracted.
like
That's
MK
how we go.
Ultra?
What's
We
that?
paid for MK Ultra experiments.
Yeah,
Like that's a
those
conspiracy
are not
that happened in secret.
conspiracies. These are not. That's the thing about a
But
conspiracy.
it's unlawful and it happens in secret. That's literally the definition of a conspiracy.
So was slavery. Didn't happen in secret, but it was very unlawful. We can agree with that one, right?
Yeah, but
So was the
that's-
genocide of the Native Americans. We've
Nobody
done a
knew
lot of
about
stuff
MK
that
Ultra.
wasn't exactly constitutional in our past, right? So it's up to us by today's standards to decide how we're going to argue that, whether it's in line with the spirit and not the letter of the law, because, you know, a lot of those founding fathers kind of unfortunately owned slaves, so it's a little difficult to take what they say about freedom and everybody being free like too seriously, like to the literal level, because that would still be okay to hold slaves according to them. It'd be difficult and we wouldn't like it, but we'd still do it if we had a farm that dictated that we have to do that. So what we do is we try to find the spirit of the law and the Constitution and see whether our current standards are living up to it or not. And you need to do that in an intelligent way rather than going basically on the sidetrack that conspiracies are. They are sidetracks. That's exactly what they are. And they have that effect of discouraging actual analysis. So if you don't want your government invading your metadata, which is not listening to your conversations necessarily, but just collecting who it is that you talk to in a log. A little bit of a gray area. If you don't want them claiming that, then you argue against it. It's unconstitutional. That does count as surveillance, which we don't want. Good? Got to move on. I like it. That brings us to our last. Let's see. Okay, formatting. This should be pretty self-explanatory. A narrative is a story. This is another one of your longer essays. And we're going to have these ones in our last conference, and you're going to have a little bit of time after that to work on, after Thanksgiving, we're going to basically be working on timed writing for our final and revising your portfolio to hand in on December 8th. So with this one, here are the guidelines for a narrative essay. It has a plot, which means events that move toward a point. It has characters in it. It happens somewhere, and this action moves towards something happening. So you can get tricky and have the climax be an anticlimax, but that's pretty tricky. You might want to just blow up the Death Star, and when we know that the Death Star explodes, the movie's pretty much over. Pretty much. If you want to hand Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia a medal, and Han Solo a medal, you can do that afterwards. But you know that once the Death Star blows up, movie's over. So wrap it up, pin your medal on your hero if you need to, or you could just let it blow up and just be done with it. In a short story like what you're going to do there, and this is writing a narrative, it could be a true narrative from your life. It may not be. You might just want to make the whole thing up. I want to give you the freedom to explore whatever it is that you want to do. So the easiest way to do this is to write a personal experience in first person, as in, I woke up one day. And you kind of like make it towards going one day. Like, let's say your first line is something along the lines, or the situation rather, is, in my junior year of high school, I used to play a lot of soccer. But during one soccer game, I thought I was actually going to kill somebody. And you move forward and it goes toward that moment. It moves toward that moment of getting so frustrated with a ref that was making bad calls and another team who was egging you on and playing dirty and checking you when the ref wasn't looking and all that good stuff. And it moves toward that climax of, and that's when I got threw out with a red card. Boom, at the end, and you're done. So you want to move it towards, and it's something that should happen. It's not the kind of stuff that happened. Generally, it's the one thing it's moving toward. You can start with the kinds of stuff like I used to play soccer, but there was this one time, and boom, then you're into it, and that's it. So that was everything that I wanted to cover today. And if anybody wants to talk about, I didn't screen share that properly. So that was week 8. Let's see, that was week 13. Sorry. So if you're looking in Brightspace, that was week 13. I'm going to go back to this for 2 seconds just to show you. What I was pointing at was week 13 and this, bang. Essay should include all these parts. And this, plot, characters, setting, and climax. Maybe you'll conclude, maybe you'll just end it. That's fine. Okay. Aside from conspiracy theories, which I am happy to stick around and talk about after class, does anybody have any questions about the 9 essays right now? Any one of them? As we move closer, please feel free to go ahead and email me specific questions. If a couple of people ask the same question, what I'll do is I'll kind of address it like, when we're in lecture format so everybody hears the answer. But work out on them one at a time. Just start with the descriptive essay, which is due in a week, and review your grammar. I'm going to have probably one more grammar worksheet before we take a test in 2 weeks on the grammar. And I think that'll be that. So feel free to log off, but I'll stick around. And please, let's continue a discussion. Absolutely. I talked a lot for that one. So
Thanks, Professor Starr.
thank you very much, everybody. Go ahead and log off. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. All right. Take it easy, y'all.